beep, beep. Welcome to the Court of the EDI Jester. How are we, everyone? How are we doing? What have I got for thee today? Well, first things first. Do become a warrior teacher. We're recruiting for May. Doing the hair there. Recruiting for May. Recruiting for May. So please do come along and join us. Buy me a coffee. Usual stuff. Right. The news is, first of all, YouTube is going through my site, taking things down for hate speech. There we go. They're doubling down. Here we go. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm looking at Rumble, but that seems to be a bit of a mess. I can't make up my mind what to do about all of it now. But we'll see. I'll keep you informed as things go on until it gets pointless. All right, so let's see what happens. We know this happens. It's happened to other people. Well, now it's happening to me. So I've got something here for you today, which comes from a Substack blog, which I think is rather important and that you may wish to take time to read. It's quite a long piece, but we'll get to the nub of it. And then the link is in the Dubras as usual. I hope you're all up for reading, because this is a good one, a really good one. Okay, it's called Do As I Say, Not As I Do. Why I Stopped Believing Anyone Benefits from Sex Trait Modification. That's interesting, isn't it? From Michelle Alleva, A-L-L-E-V-A, on March the 25th, 2024, on her website. So, link in the Dubras, all right? About 6 months after I stopped identifying as transgender, I waded into the discourse on Twitter. I began by following other detransitioners and expanded from there. When you speak as someone who is critical of sex trait modification, you end up attracting all different kinds of people. You attract radical feminists who have been railing against the concept of gender identity and discussing its impact on the rights of women for decades. You attract parents of trans-identifying children who are desperately seeking answers regarding an intervention that is being pushed on people younger and younger. You attract concerned healthcare professionals who see something dangerous happening within the medical system and want to correct it. You attract social conservatives who want to maintain traditional values that have guided society for many years. You attract people whose values come from religion, also traditional, but with perhaps more of an emphasis on morality and spiritual well-being. You attract gay men and lesbian women whose orientation is challenged by an ideology which posits that homosexual can mean attraction to both sexes, so long as the opposite sex has a special identity. Told you it was good, didn't I? And you attract what might be termed old-school transsexuals who tend to frame sex trait modification exclusively as a treatment for gender dysphoria and who are discontented with the mainstream trans rights movement. And in brackets, we then have, I certainly haven't named every kind of person you may attract, close brackets. I know the feeling, Michelle. I know the feeling. Together, these people make up what social justice leftists, that's the Fruit Loops and the Loons, right, have taken to calling the anti-gender movement. Oh, God. The anti-gender movement, right? See Wikipedia for a biased explanation. They tend to give the impression that everyone in the movement has a common goal and common values. This simply isn't true. Many of these people don't even consider each other allies. Radical feminists often work with social and religious conservatives due to conflicting opinions on, won't work with them due to conflicting opinions on abortion, for example. I was fresh out of social justice culture when I joined Twitter and highly critical of what I'd just left behind. Not just the ideology around transgenderism, but around leftist identity politics as a whole. I wish I had a penny for every time somebody told me that. That's me, not her. Sorry, Michelle, I'm interrupting you. Michelle continues, I watched as people with certain marginalised, in speech marks, identities were given credibility and authority, and bad faith actors weaponised those identities in order to gain power and abuse others. The result was a movement full of narcissistic leaders who could not be criticised, lest you be deemed a bad person and excommunicated. Brackets, note, I've observed the same dynamics in parts of the anti-gender movement, in speech marks, brackets, quote. I was still calling myself a leftist at this time. Really? Good luck with that. I love all my lefty followers. I do. They're great because these are, stone cold Labourites. They're people who know what Labour was about. When it used to be an opposition as opposed to an ideological bandwagon of coaches filled with nut jobs going down the road, like some strange trans convoy. Hello, rubber duck. All there talking to each other about nonsense. I was simply a dissident leftist instead. So the movement there, the distinction between a leftist and a dissident leftist, was what Michelle chose as part of her journey. I was simply a dissident leftist instead. To me, left was progressive and therefore correct. Brackets. And therefore correct. Close brackets. And I still wanted to be seen as a good person, in speech marks. Can we see where this is going, folks? I didn't want my friends to think I was transphobic, in speech marks. Michelle, your awakening is giving me joy. I didn't want my friends to think I was transphobic, just that I had concerns that should be taken seriously. I also wanted to remain in touch with my friends who were still transitioned. I hoped that if they ever changed their minds one day, they would come to me. This is a lovely person. If your goal is to reach the left on the topic of safe sex trait modification, then using identity politics to your advantage might be a decent strategy. Because of this, I was quite willing to work with heterodox transsexuals early on. These are primarily people who were satisfied with their own treatments, but believed that medical professionals needed to readopt the restrictions that once existed, particularly for people under the age of 18. They also tended to emphasize, speech marks, gender dysphoria, speech marks. This is a person who gets it. As a medical condition in need of treatment rather than the mainstream emphasis on gender identity, speech marks, as a natural human variation, which of course it's not. I believe this remains what is considered a moderate view for most, that there is an exceedingly small number of people who truly need to have their sex traits chemically and surgically modified, and who must live in the gender role, speech marks, of the opposite sex, or else they will be forever miserable, and therefore all of the health risks outweigh the benefits. This is now exactly as convincing to me as the idea that there is an exceedingly small number of people who truly need to have their legs amputated and live as disabled people, or else they will be forever miserable, and therefore all of the health risks outweigh the benefits. That is to say, it is no longer convincing to me at all. And at that point, I'll leave it because there's still plenty of it to go. But my goodness me, my thanks to Michelle for this. It is Michelle. Have I got that right? You know what I'm like with names. Let's just go back and see, just to make sure. It is Michelle. To Michelle Aleva. Michelle, thank you. This is a wonderful testimony of an individual who's been to hell and back and has now come to the conclusion that the whole thing's absolute nonsense. In effect, they've reached the position that the vast majority of us are now, I believe, in. If we look at what's going on with some of the organisations, they're beginning to say it's all rubbish. It's just all got to go. It's got to stop for everybody. We don't go around amputating people's legs off because they're nuts. Why are we doing that? Why are we doing it? Because they believe there's something they're not. It's a shame, isn't it? But that's where we are. You go and have a read. I think you'll find it interesting. I'll see you later.